Something begins to change after a spiritual awakening. Not outside of you, but within you. A quiet shift, almost invisible at first, yet powerful enough to alter everything you once believed was normal. The world remains the same. People continue their routines, conversations carry on as usual, yet you feel different. You listen, but something feels off. You smile, but it no longer reaches the same place inside. You participate, but a part of you stands back, observing. Slowly you begin to realize that the life you once lived was built on layers of unconscious habit, automatic reactions, social performances, emotional scripts passed from one person to another, and now, those scripts no longer run inside you. Conversations that once entertained you now feel repetitive, jokes feel empty, complaints feel draining, drama feels unnecessary. You start noticing how often people speak without awareness, act without intention, and react without reflection. You see the emotional loops, the need for validation, the hunger for attention, the fear beneath the surface of confidence, the insecurity behind loud voices, the loneliness hidden in constant talking, and as this awareness grows, something surprising happens. You start feeling distant from people you once enjoyed. Not because they changed, but because you did. You may begin to wonder if something is wrong with you. Why do gatherings feel exhausting? Why does small talk feel pointless? Why does forced politeness feel like a performance? Why does your patience feel thinner, your tolerance lower, your interest weaker? This confusion is common at the beginning of awakening. Many mistake it for negativity, arrogance, or emotional coldness. But in truth, it is sensitivity returning. It is consciousness waking up. It is the mind finally seeing clearly after years of sleepwalking. When awareness rises, illusions fall. And most social connection in the modern world is built upon illusion. Illusion of identity, illusion of status, illusion of personality, illusion of control. People wear masks so often that they forget they are wearing them. They play roles so long that they believe the role is who they are. But once you awaken, you no longer connect to masks. You look for truth. You look for authenticity. You look for presence. And when these are missing, connection feels impossible. This is where the feeling of disliking people begins, not as hatred, not as judgment, but as a deep inner resistance to anything that is not real. You begin to sense emotional noise more intensely. Certain voices feel heavy, certain attitudes feel draining, certain interactions leave you tired. You may withdraw sooner from conversations. You may avoid environments that once felt normal. You may choose silence more often. You may prefer being alone rather than being surrounded by energy that feels scattered and unconscious. This is not isolation out of weakness, this is withdrawal out of strength. Because once you recognize your own inner stillness, anything that disturbs it becomes noticeable. Once you experience genuine inner peace, anything artificial feels loud. Once you taste awareness, anything mechanical feels empty. At this stage, many feel guilt. They believe they should be more social, more friendly, more accommodating, more agreeable. But awakening does not make you antisocial. It makes you selective. It refines your energy. It teaches you discernment. It teaches you that not every invitation deserves a yes. Not every conversation deserves participation. And not every relationship deserves access to your inner space. This is the beginning of energetic maturity. You are not becoming distant from people, you are becoming closer to yourself. And as this closeness grows, anything misaligned naturally falls away. Friendships built on convenience begin to fade. Interactions based on obligation lose meaning. Connections rooted in shared suffering feel uncomfortable. The old social identity you once carried dissolves. This can feel strange. It can feel lonely. It can feel like standing between two worlds, no longer fitting into the old, not yet fully rooted in the new. But this stage is necessary, because before new conscious connections appear, the unconscious ones must dissolve. Before authentic relationships arrive, inauthentic ones must fall away. Before deep connection is possible, superficial connection must lose its grip. This is the first sign of transformation. Not hatred, not superiority, not rejection, just awakening. And once this shift begins, there is no going back, only deeper understanding ahead. Once the initial shift takes place, perception changes. You no longer experience people the way you once did. Something inside you now watches more than it reacts. You notice subtleties you never noticed before. tone behind words, intention behind actions, emotion behind expressions. What once passed unnoticed now stands out with clarity. Before awakening, connection often happened unconsciously. You mirrored others without realizing it. You absorbed moods automatically. You participated in group dynamics instinctively. You laughed when others laughed. You agreed when disagreement felt uncomfortable. You blended in to belong, most people do. It is how social survival works. But awakening interrupts this automatic behavior. It pulls you out of the current and places you on the shore. From there, you see the river of human interaction flowing endlessly. Repeating patterns, repeated stories, recycled emotions. You begin to recognize how often people speak just to fill silence, how often they complain to bond through negativity, how often they seek agreement rather than truth, how often they perform versions of themselves designed to gain acceptance. How rarely they pause to reflect, how rarely they truly listen, how rarely they question their own behavior. This realization changes everything. Small talk feels like a ritual without meaning. Gossip feels like shared distraction. Competitive energy feels like insecurity seeking validation. Excessive joking feels like avoidance of depth. Constant seriousness feels like fear of vulnerability. You start seeing the invisible motivations driving ordinary interaction. And because you see it, you can no longer pretend you don't. This is when people may begin to feel tiring. Not because they are bad, not because they are lesser, but because they are unconscious. And unconscious behavior demands energy from those who are aware. It pulls attention outward, away from inner stillness into emotional turbulence. You feel this immediately, a tightness after certain conversations, a heaviness after certain company, a subtle exhaustion after certain encounters. Your body becomes the detector, your nervous system becomes the compass, so you begin to withdraw, not out of dislike, out of understanding. You begin choosing words more carefully, speaking less, listening more, observing longer before engaging. You stop explaining yourself to those who cannot hear you. You stop forcing connection where resonance does not exist, and this is where misunderstanding often arises. Others may think you are distant, cold, arrogant, uninterested, but the truth is simpler. We no longer connect through surface identity. You seek essence, and most people have never explored their own essence. They live in personality, not presence, in reaction, not awareness. This gap creates friction. You may try at first to bridge it, to stay friendly, to stay agreeable, to keep old bonds alive, but something inside you resists. The effort feels heavy, the conversations feel forced, the laughter feels mechanical. Eventually, you accept what is happening. You are not losing people, you are losing illusions about people. You begin to see that many relationships were built on shared distractions, shared habits, shared wounds, shared escape from inner emptiness. And now that you no longer need these escapes, the relationships lose their foundation. This can be painful. There may be nostalgia for how things used to feel. There may be moments of doubt, moments where you wonder if you should return to the old ways just to feel connected again. But once awareness opens, it cannot close. You have tasted authenticity, and you cannot return to artificial connection. This stage refines your discernment. You begin recognizing subtle signals of genuine presence, a calm voice, a listening silence, a thoughtful response, a person who speaks from experience, not performance, a connection that feels easy, not draining. These encounters may be rare at first, but when they occur, you recognize them instantly. There is no effort, no mask, no role, just being. And this is when you understand why the old connections had to fade, because you are being prepared for new ones. Not connections built on need, but connections built on awareness. Not relationships built on distraction, but relationships built on truth. And so the distancing continues, not as loneliness, but as alignment. The more clearly you see illusions, the less you can live inside them. The more deeply you value authenticity, the less tolerance you have for pretense. The more stillness you find inside yourself, the less attraction you feel toward external noise. This is the quiet revolution happening within you, and it is only the beginning. As awareness deepens, something subtle but undeniable begins to happen. You start to recognize your own energy, not as an abstract idea, but as a living experience. You feel when it rises, you feel when it drains. You sense when it expands in peace, you sense when it contracts in tension. And once you become aware of this, you can no longer ignore it. Before awakening, energy was spent freely. Conversations, obligations, entertainment, social gatherings, all accepted without question. You gave your attention automatically because you were unaware that attention was the most valuable resource you possessed. But now, you see clearly. You understand that where your attention goes, your life flows. And suddenly, you become protective of it. You start noticing how certain people leave you feeling lighter, while others leave you exhausted. Some voices soothe your nervous system, while others stir restlessness. Some interactions feel natural, while others feel like work. These differences were always present, but now your sensitivity reveals them with precision. This is when selectivity begins, not out of judgment, but out of self-awareness. You begin choosing when to speak and when to remain silent. You choose where to go and where not to go. You choose whom to engage deeply and whom to greet politely but briefly. You stop forcing yourself into spaces that feel wrong for your spirit. You stop chasing connections that require you to shrink your authenticity. At first, this feels unfamiliar. You may worry that you are becoming distant. You may feel guilty for declining invitations. You may wonder if you are isolating yourself too much. But gradually you realize something important. Every time you honor your energy, your inner peace grows stronger. And every time you betray it, your inner world feels disturbed. This inner feedback becomes your guide. You start to sense emotional manipulation instantly. You recognize when someone seeks attention rather than connection. You feel when a conversation is driven by ego rather than sincerity. You detect subtle power games, passive aggression, and hidden insecurity. And once you detect them, participation feels impossible. So you withdraw your energy gently, without drama, without explanation, without anger, simply by not feeding what no longer resonates. This is why people after awakening seem distant. In reality, they are simply no longer available for unconscious exchange. Your energy becomes like a finely tuned instrument. It resonates with truth and dissonates with pretense. It opens to authenticity and closes to performance. It welcomes depth and resists superficiality. This refinement is essential. Without it, awakening remains incomplete. Awareness without discernment leads to exhaustion. Sensitivity without boundaries leads to overwhelm. But when selectivity develops, you become sovereign within your own inner space. You begin to realize that solitude is not emptiness, it is nourishment. Silence is not boredom, it is clarity. Distance from draining influences is not rejection, it is self-respect. In this phase, you may spend more time alone. You may speak less. You may observe more. You may feel content doing simple things without constant stimulation. Others may find this strange. They may feel uncomfortable with your silence. They may interpret your calm as disinterest. But the truth is, your inner world has become rich. You no longer need constant external input to feel alive. You no longer need validation to feel worthy. You no longer need noise to feel present. And because of this, you cannot return to old patterns. You cannot pretend excitement where there is none. You cannot fake connection where there is no resonance. You cannot invest energy where there is no reciprocity. This selectivity is not selfishness. It is sacred responsibility. You are learning to care for your inner state as something precious, something fragile, something worthy of protection. And slowly something beautiful happens. When your energy becomes selective, it begins attracting what matches it. People who value depth appear. Conversations that nourish arise. Connections that feel effortless unfold. These may be fewer in number, but they are rich in quality. You discover that one authentic connection is worth more than 100 shallow ones. One truthful conversation is worth more than endless small talk. One moment of genuine presence is worth more than a lifetime of performance. And so, your world becomes quieter, but truer, smaller, but deeper, simpler, but more alive. This is the gift hidden inside selectivity. You are not losing connection, you are upgrading it. As your energy becomes more selective, another phase unfolds naturally. Isolation. Not isolation forced upon you, but isolation chosen by your own inner wisdom. A quiet retreat from the noise of the world. A soft closing of doors that once stood wide open. A gentle pulling inward, toward yourself. At first, this phase can feel unsettling. Messages go unanswered. Invitations are declined. Social circles grow smaller. The familiar warmth of constant interaction fades. And in the silence that follows, a question may arise: where did everyone go? But the deeper truth is this: they did not leave you. You simply stepped away from what no longer aligns. Isolation is not abandonment. It is recalibration. In this space, you are no longer reacting to external demands. You are no longer adapting yourself to fit others. You are no longer bending your truth to maintain belonging. Instead, you are learning to exist without performance, to breathe without permission, to think without influence, to feel without distraction. This is where you meet yourself. Not the version shaped by family, not the version shaped by society, not the version shaped by survival, but the raw, quiet presence beneath all identities. Without constant interaction, your nervous system begins to settle. Old emotional patterns begin to dissolve. The urge to seek validation weakens. The fear of being alone softens. You start discovering that solitude is not emptiness. It is space. Space to integrate what you have seen. Space to process what you have felt. Space to rewire your inner world. Many resist this phase. They fill every moment with noise. They reach for social distraction. They return to old relationships just to avoid being alone with themselves. But those who allow isolation to unfold experience a rare transformation. They stop needing people to feel whole. And once that need dissolves, connection becomes pure. Because you no longer connect out of lack. You connect out of abundance. During this phase, old relationships may fade completely. Some friends stop calling, some family members feel confused by your change, some ACQ. You acquaintances forget your presence. This can sting. Not because you need them, but because memory lingers. You remember shared laughter, shared struggles, shared time. Yet, you begin to see clearly. Many of these bonds existed because both parties needed distraction from themselves. Now that you no longer seek escape, the bond has no function. This realization is not bitter, it is liberating. You understand that people enter your life for seasons, some for comfort, some for growth, some for lessons, and when the lesson completes, departure is natural. Isolation allows this acceptance to settle deeply. No chasing, no forcing, no clinging, just allowing. In the stillness, something else occurs. Your intuition sharpens. Your inner voice becomes clearer. You begin sensing what feels right before logic appears. You trust yourself more. You second-guess less. You start making choices based on inner alignment rather than external approval. This is the rebirth of self-trust. Without isolation, this trust cannot grow. Because constant external input drowns inner knowing. Constant social noise clouds inner guidance. Constant adaptation weakens self-direction. But in solitude, your inner compass calibrates. You begin to enjoy your own presence. You find peace in silence. You experience contentment without cause. You realize you are not lonely. You are whole. And from this wholeness, a new kind of connection begins to form. Subtle at first, gentle, natural. People appear who feel familiar without history. Conversations flow without effort. Presence feels nourishing rather than draining. These connections are rare, but they are real. And this is why isolation is necessary. It clears space, it removes clutter, it resets your social world. It ensures that what returns is aligned with who you have become, not who you used to be. You were never meant to stay in isolation forever. You were meant to pass through it, like a seed underground before breaking soil, like a caterpillar within the cocoon, like a night before dawn. In isolation, you transform. In transformation, you realign. In realignment, you attract what belongs. So if you find yourself alone, know this: you are not being punished, you are being prepared. The world you once lived in cannot contain the person you are becoming. And this phase is proof that the awakening is real. Now comes the most important moment of all: acceptance. After the confusion, after the distancing, after the silence, after the transformation, you stand at a crossroads. You can either return to the familiar world of unconscious connection, forcing yourself back into patterns that no longer fit, or you can honor what is awakened inside you and walk forward with trust. This is where true power begins, because awakening is not just about seeing truth, it is about living it. And living truth often requires courage. The courage to disappoint others, the courage to say no without guilt, the courage to be misunderstood, the courage to stand alone when necessary. If you have reached this point, understand something deeply. You are not broken. You are not antisocial. You are not heartless. You are simply awake in a world where most are still asleep. And that is not a flaw. That is a calling. Honor your sensitivity. It is not weakness, it is intelligence. Honor your selectivity. It is not arrogance, it is alignment. Honor your solitude. It is not loneliness, it is wisdom. Stop trying to explain yourself to those who cannot hear you. Stop shrinking to maintain acceptance. Stop returning to environments that disturb your peace. You have already outgrown them. Your soul knows it. Your body knows it. Your awareness confirms it. Trust that what falls away was never meant to remain. Trust that what feels distant was never truly aligned. Trust that what remains will always feel effortless. You do not need to chase connection. You only need to stay authentic. The right people recognize authenticity instinctively. They feel it without words. They resonate without effort. They arrive without force. So choose your path consciously. Choose depth over popularity. Choose awareness over distraction. Choose peace over performance. Choose truth over comfort. Choose inner freedom over social approval. Let go of the guilt for changing. Growth is not betrayal. Evolution is not selfish. Awakening is not a mistake. It is the natural unfolding of who you were always meant to be. If people misunderstand you, let them. If they walk away, let them. If they criticize your distance, let them. You are not here to maintain illusions. You are here to live truth. And remember, every soul that has awakened has walked this path. Every conscious being has experienced the shedding of old connections. Every seeker of truth has known the quiet of isolation. And every one of them has emerged stronger, clearer, and more authentic. So stand firm, protect your peace, guard your energy, speak when truth is needed. Remain silent when silence is wisdom. Connect when resonance exists. Withdraw when alignment is absent. This is mastery of self. This is sovereignty of spirit. This is the new way of being. And as you walk forward, know this. You are not alone in your aloneness. Others are awakening too. Others are breaking free from illusion. Others are searching for the same depth you now live. One day, your paths will cross, not through force, not through search, but through natural alignment. Until then, stay true. Stay aware, stay real, because you did not start disliking people after awakening. You simply started loving yourself enough to no longer pretend,